Good afternoon, everyone, and I've been waiting all summer to say this, to the season premiere of Cup of Joe, the 2021 season of Cup of Joe. I'm so happy that you could be with us today. My name's Kathy Barnard. I'm the Alumni Director and a proud Vandal alumna myself. And it's great to have everybody here. And again, so nice to see so many familiar faces. I want to say a special welcome to one of our great Vandal leaders, Terry Golick, our athletic director, is with us today. Thank you, Terry, for joining us. Really, really appreciate you being here. Before we get started, just a couple of reminders, because it's been a while, right? It's been like all summer that we haven't done this. So one, remember to keep your mute button on. I forget whether it's on or off, but before we get started, everyone check and make sure that it's on, unless you really want us to hear your dinner conversation. Then you can leave it off, right? You know, it's up to you. And then second reminder, if you have questions for our guest today, please send them directly to Sandy Larson. Sandy, raise your hand. Via the chat, and we'll get to as many of those as we can later in the program. And Sandy will help us field all of those. So now it is my honor and privilege to introduce my friend, colleague, and fellow Vandal, Dr. Blaine Eckles, or apparently Beckles, Vice Provost for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. So Blaine earned his PhD in Adult Organizational Learning and Leadership from U of I in 2011. And he came to the University of Idaho as Dean of Students in 2015. Prior to that, he spent many years working at another institution in the southern part of the state, that which we will not name, in various student services roles. He's worked in higher education since he started his undergraduate degree at the University of Oregon in 1989. Here's my experience. He has always been a strong advocate for the student experience. He connects with current students so well, and he finds a wide variety of ways to do that, even to the point of playing Mario Kart, which is a video game, albeit badly, but you still play whenever he has the chance. And it's just such a great entree for conversations with our current students. He's been an amazing partner in our office's work with current students and alumni. Here's what I love about Blaine. He doesn't hang up when I call and say, hey, I've got an idea. He's always willing to try something new. So welcome, Blaine. I'm so glad you could join us.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'll be honest, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. This is, I'll be honest, the highlight of my semester so far. Well, maybe after the students coming back was actually the highlight of the semester, but this is a very close second because it's always fun to engage, and this is fun. I've loved these. They're fun to watch, and just feel very honored to be here.
Excellent. So I had hoped that by now we wouldn't be talking about COVID ever again, other than as a really bad memory. But sadly, that isn't the case. So let's just take a moment, and really only a moment, to let you give us an update on kind of the ongoing things we're doing to keep everyone safe here on campus, and at the same time, keep classes and life as normal as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent question. And it's obviously a very important one. You know, we've got some experience handling and working with COVID. And the big difference is between now and last year is we have vaccines as well that really have created a space where we can open things up a bit more. We still have to be very mindful. Obviously, the Delta variant is something that we're paying very close attention to. But we do know vaccines make a difference. We know it mitigates the seriousness of it. As a matter of fact, you know, the majority of folks going into the hospital with COVID are unvaccinated, which is why we are just kind of all in on the vaccines. We've created a vaccine incentive where we're really encouraging students to get the vaccine. We'll give every student, a 1-credit student up to a full-time student, $50 to show verification of the vaccine. And then for any full-time student that submits that, they're going to be entered into a drawing for one of 10 $1,000 tuition credits, or one of two, at least two. We're working on some more $5,000 tuition credits, and those start just this week. As a matter of fact, I'm calling it $1,000 Thursdays. So starting this Thursday and for the next 10 weeks, we're going to be giving $1,000 away to a student that submits their vaccine. And then we'll also be doing some drawings in there sporadically with $5,000. So we're really excited about that. We are requiring masks on campus. We know the masks coupled with the vaccine is one of the best ways to mitigate this. And I'm the first to say nobody likes wearing the mask. No one likes it whatsoever. I don't like having one-on-one conversations in masks. I don't like being in group meeting with masks, but we know it's effective in mitigating the spread and keeping it from going to other folks, even if you are vaccinated, because you can still potentially transmit it. So, but our students are responding incredibly well to all of our requests that way, quite frankly. Matter of fact, if you look at the recent Argonaut, you'll see an article in there about the faculty are just very pleased and very happy. Students are complying so well with the masks. We've had a few folks that have shared with us that they're tired of it. They've let us know their opinions, and you know what? I can't do anything but respect those opinions. But at the end of the day, our job is to stay open, and we see these as strategies that are going to help us maintain that ability, because we know going into an online only experience will be very detrimental to the learning environment. And we want to deliver on our promise to students and their families that we want to stay open and in person as much as we can. So, you know, we're doing a lot. We're still supporting students that do test positive. We have an isolation unit that we support them in. For any student that thinks they've been exposed and go into quarantine, we still support them as well too. So we're doing a lot of the same things that we did last year. And vaccines are really the key here for doing that and getting us moving forward in a very successful way. So get your vaccine.
Yeah. If you had any doubt, now you know for sure, get your vaccine, right? But, well, thanks for that. Thanks for up to date. And fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed if we all keep doing the right things that, you know, soon that we'll be able to continue with in-person classes.
Well, and we're not indefinite on the masks either. I mean, we're reviewing that every 3 weeks just to determine, do we need to keep this in place and whatnot. So if we all can do our part, we can start moving things in a more positive way on COVID, then we'll look to lift that mask requirement.
Excellent. Excellent. So thanks for the update. Like I said, I'd hope we wouldn't have to spend any time at all talking about COVID by now, but it's all good. It's all good. So my first question is, I know that nobody grows up saying when they're 10 years old, boy, I want to be an alumni director when I grow up. And I think it's the same with the dean of students. Nobody says, I want to be a dean of students when I grow up. So talk a little bit, Blaine, about how you got into student services work and kind of that journey from, you know, college to where you're at now.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. You know, when I was an undergrad, I really didn't know what I wanted to do professionally. I mean, like most students, I can really empathize with their journey. I switched my majors. I started off in engineering. I'll be honest, I struggled with a couple engineering classes, and my running joke is, even if you fell out at engineering, you can still become a dean of students. And so the fallback path is not too bad of a route to go, quite frankly. From that aspect of it. But, you know, my journey really started before I came to college, and I didn't realize it. I had a great uncle who was deaf and blind. I learned sign language just so I could communicate with him. My mother had multiple sclerosis, and so she needed a lot of accommodations and assistance. So when I went into graduate school, I got a degree in rehab counseling and then did an internship at an institution of higher education, where I learned how to do accommodations. And that is where my professional career took off. I started working at the University of Oregon in their disability services office. Then I transitioned over to Boise State, where I worked there for many years. And through my evolution as a professional at that institution, I took on additional responsibilities, student discipline, overseeing our legal services, our mediation, eventually moving into the Associate Dean of Students role. And then I came up to the University of Idaho in 2015 to become the Dean of Students here, and just absolutely loved it. I loved my time at my former institution, but I absolutely love being at this institution. And the funny part is I've had 2 presidents now tell me here, man, I'd never want to be a Dean of Students. You know, that was the former president, President Saban, and even President Green has mentioned that to me a couple times. He goes, I don't know how you do that job. And I'm like, you're the president. You've got a way harder job than I do. And he's nothing but supportive and appreciative of the work that we're doing. But I've got a great team that I work with, stellar professionals that across the board lead with students as their North Star. And I'm just so proud of the team I get to work with on a daily basis, and just some amazing Vandals too. You walk a day in my shoes, you end up understanding why I love my job so much.
I was just going to ask you, what is it about the work that's so compelling?
You know, what I really love about it is I tell people on a regular basis, my job is to deal with adults. I deal with adults on a regular basis. I don't work with kids. I don't work with girls or boys. I work with adults. Now, they're young adults primarily, but I absolutely love watching them develop and grow into their future selves, because they're leaving home where for the last 18 years, more often than not, they've been following someone else's life experiences and goals and expectations, and watching them come here and engage in different learning environments and different experiences to where they start growing. You can see their eyes opening up to going, I don't have to go that way. I think I want to go this way. And this way is actually better for me. And it taps into their passion. And it is just so invigorating to do that. And it's just an absolute privilege to be a bystander watching this evolution from the student development experience. That's really what gets me going, is just creating different opportunities and ways students can grow and learn and develop. Is just, it's an absolute privilege. And I work with some great folks, great alums that do that same kind of development work as our students, great student leaders that they start seeing how they can help other students do that same thing too. So it's really exciting to be part of that. And I get to do that every single year. It never gets old for me. It never gets old.
Oh, see, what did they say? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. That's, yeah.
Absolutely. But I still want to get paid for not working a day in my life. So.
I understand. I'll give you that. So you also, though, get to see some of the nitty gritty. What are the biggest challenges that you face as dean of students?
Well, coupled with that growth and development are some really bad choices students make at times, just to be absolutely honest. And there's some really tragic decisions students make too. In my office, I have a drawer. I call it my death file drawer. I've got a file on every student that has died while they were enrolled at the university that goes back 25 years. And working with students who make some really sad decisions, whether it's driving under the influence or an alcohol overdose that they couldn't recover from, or sad to say, suicide. The mental health is a challenge that many students face. That is some of the most difficult work that I end up doing at an institution. Also understanding I'll get off the dark path, but I work in a bureaucracy. It's a big institution, and it's something that's hard for students to navigate at times. And so I see it as part of my job and the job of my team to help students navigate that. I refer to us as Sherpas, who know how to climb a mountain. Our job is to help fix the ropes for them, but we can't climb it for them, but we can kind of point out the paths to take and help them make the path easier to see. But ultimately, they have to do that. If a student wants to get out of school from a class they were enrolled in last spring, I just can't make that decision. Many people think a dean of students can do that, and I can do a lot, but I can't just snap my fingers and pull a student out of an enrollment. They have to engage in a process, and that's a developmental process too. Just like many of us on the Zoom call, if we have something to do with the city, we can't just call the mayor and have him fix it for us. We got to go through petitions, we got to go through reviews. So it's our job to kind of help students navigate what those bureaucracies are, because bureaucracies, frustrating as though they can be, are necessary at times too. Otherwise you have a lot of chaos. Right. But it's also my job to help remove the barriers whenever I see that's a viable option, to make it easier and smoother for our students too. So those are kind of the two nuances of my position that are unique and difficult at times.
Mm-hmm. In the time that you've worked with students, how have students changed? How have what they need, want, like, love, hate, how has that evolved over time?
It has evolved with this thing right here. This is
okay.
Students have the sum total of all knowledge at their fingertips, truthfully. And I have never had a professional experience more challenging than I have since, I'll say roughly about 2010 onwards, when students can just get instant information, instant gratification, and that speeds up the time frame that they want information back. You'll have a student send you an email, then they'll follow it up with the next day being impatient about not responding to you. And I'm still trying to figure out how to log into my email, quite frankly, a lot of the times, right? And so, working with students in understanding the speed of light in which they try to learn and connect is really important. And it also means we have to figure out how to engage students differently too. Some of the things that we might have done 20 years ago is not going to connect as readily as much for students because they have that instant gratification mindset. Now, part of our job is also to help students slow things down a little bit, understand that there's strength and patience in waiting and learning before you launch into getting the ready solution is not always the best solution. And so, it's a fine line of what we do. Communication is one of the biggest challenges any institution has. How do you get information out to students? Because they're getting it in so many, the TikTok, Face, Twitter feed that they're signing up for is just really hard to predict on how are they going to gather that information. And email is not the way they're getting it primarily. They're getting it through their social media, and knowing where to tap into is a challenge at times to connect with them.
Oh yeah, no, my children made it very clear that email is for old people. So that is not the best way to
absolutely. But any students listening, that is still the number one way that we connect and communicate with students. So check your emails, check your Vandal email account.
So Blaine, talk a little bit about how the challenges for students have changed. And in some ways I feel like they're the same. When I was in school 100 years ago, it was, how am I going to pay for it? How many jobs will I have to work to, get my tuition and fees? And I know some students still struggle with that, but what are their biggest concerns?
Yeah, affordability is still up there. And we can all say, I thought it was expensive when I was in school in the 80s, right? But it's nothing like it is these days, quite frankly. Dwindling state support is impacting how much students can do. More students are taking on loans. I think our average undergraduate student debt is about $24,000 to $26,000. I haven't looked recently. That's a huge amount of money to put on the shoulders of a student when that's a couple years worth of tuition of what they're taking on in order to do that. Family support is not as readily available either because of the family expenses. Things are just more expensive. So that's definitely one challenge. Another challenge that I see, but it's also mixed with real, I'll say positive things, is mental health challenges. And the mental health challenge is not positive, but students are talking about that more than I've ever heard in our college setting. They're talking about the need for help and support. They're seeking out counseling services on our campus, which we have a phenomenal counseling service program. We've got probably the best staff counseling service program in the entire state. We've got many psychologists, we've got a psychiatric nurse practitioner, we have case managers. We have a really full set. So the challenge that students have is they're working. They've got family concerns, especially now with COVID, what's going on, because we have a lot of students concerned about the safety of their parents or grandparents. I've talked to more than one student who've broken down in tears in regards to concerns in that aspect of it. They've got their academic rigor, then they've got their involvement on campus because they're trying to flesh out their experience as a student to build out their resume. And then, on top of all that, they're just trying to enjoy being a college student. So they've got a lot more pressure of what I see now than I ever have what it was. When I was in school, I worked my way through college without a doubt, but I didn't have to worry about going to war. We just came out of a 20-year war where we have a lot of students that are coming back from the war. We didn't have that aspect of it. I didn't have to worry about my family health at that time. There's a lot of things that, older generations have some privilege with. Our older generations also did a lot of hard things too. We have a lot of alums that fought in the Vietnam War and spent time there in student protests. So those are some just generalized things that our students are dealing with and addressing. And they're worrying about a global experience. I never had to worry about a global experience, but they are connected with what's going on all over the world.
What do they want out of their time at U of I? What do they want that college experience to be? Is it purely academic, or what are they really after in terms of their time at the university?
Yeah, they want experiences that matter. That's what they're looking for more than anything. Students spend the vast majority of their time at the University of Idaho outside of class. They're spending maybe 15, if they're full-time students, 13 to 18 hours a week in class in their learning. Now we tell them they should spend at least twice as much outside of class studying. So we 2 to 3 times as much. So it's either 30 to 45 hours a week you should be studying for the 18 you're doing in class. But they also want to do something that creates an engaging opportunity for them to learn and grow professionally. I'll give you a great example, and I talked about this gentleman before a few years ago, but a former student by the name of Sam Billingsley, great alumnus of the institution. I was coming back from the golf course one day and driving past the Lenahampton School of Music, and right outside the Kappa Sigma house, I saw an ambulance. And whenever you see an ambulance outside a chapter facility, it's not a good experience. Now, this was during recruitment, So I knew something was up. And so I pulled over, walked over and introduced myself. And I just kind of stood and talked to some of the students on the side. Well, they were out playing pickup basketball, and a student had tripped while playing basketball and hit his head, received a pretty serious concussion. And so they transported him to the hospital. So I followed the ambulance down to Gritman, walked into the emergency room there, and waited in the waiting room there until I could go in and see the student. And I had another student kind of walk in and sit down across from me. And so I introduced myself. I assumed he was a student because they looked student age. He said his name was Sam. He was a volunteer EMT. He was actually playing basketball with them, and he was a volunteer EMT. And he told me he came to the University of Idaho. He had transferred here from another institution in California, much larger institution. He goes, Dean Eckles, the reason why I came here is because I can do undergraduate research at this institution. At my former institution, that was reserved for graduate students. But here, I want to be a doctor, and I can write papers, and I can work with our faculty members, and I can build out their resume so I can go on to med school. Well, I was very proud to write him a letter of reference a couple of years later. He has since gone on to med school. I think he's graduated as well. So, I mean, our students want experiences that matter, that give them great opportunity. And we have that. I've worked with students that are performing in plays for the very first time. Talk about a confidence boost when a student can be a performer. They've always dreamed about that. We can do that. Or a music performer. We love, my wife and I, Sheila and I love going to listen to our students and their music performances, and watching them tap into their passions and grow that way is great. Student leadership opportunities, just the list goes on. They want experiences that matter, because that's how they're discovering who their future self is going to be, and they're becoming that. And that goes back to my comment earlier about the development of students, and just creating those spaces and opportunities where they can grow is just, that's exactly what they want.
And when you have a residential campus, it's that much easier, right?
Absolutely.
That many more opportunities available.
Oh, our residential campus. I absolutely love working on a residential campus. At my former institution, it was a great institution embedded in the heart of Boise. But here, I work twice as hard probably because of the residential nature. And it creates a sense of connectivity for students that is just hard to beat in so many wonderful ways. And as an alum of the institution, it makes my relationship with the student experience even that much richer, because I want students to just absolutely have a passion for earning that degree like I did with mine. And working on this campus, you have that different connectivity for what the students are engaging in and doing. And to me, it makes me more focused on how can I improve that experience for them so that they can get the most out of it here. And I have those heartfelt talks with students saying, you're wasting your opportunities here. Don't screw this up,
Right?
because your time here is finite, unless you become the dean of students, which I don't want you to do until I retire. But other than that, your time here is finite. Seize the most of it. There's a saying, ships in the harbor are safe, but that's not what ships are made for. They're made to sail the seas. So I tell students, if what you're doing is hanging out with just your small cohort of friends, or hanging out in your room, and you're not branching out, getting involved in student clubs and organizations and exploring and trying new things, you're doing college wrong. You need to push the boundaries and try different things, because that's how you're going to help you discover what your true passions are and where you want to go in your future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I know that we have a lot of questions. We'll turn that over to Sandy here in just a second. But I did want to talk a little bit about you came into you had to fill some big shoes, my friend. Bruce Pittman was the dean of students for years and years and years and years. I would probably should take, if you were here, I'd take one of those years off, but he was here for a long time.
Yes.
And I know that he that you're friends and he has been a mentor. What were some of the lessons or things that Bruce passed along to you for the role?
Yeah, so I described folks as, when I introduced myself as the dean of students, I'm the taller, wider version of Bruce Pittman is who I am. I've known Bruce for over 20 years now. He was on my doctoral dissertation committee as well. Awesome. He's been a great friend and a wonderful mentor of mine for many, many years. I mean, he's a legend in higher education, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. I think the one thing he's taught me indirectly is how to lead with authenticity, and just, being congruent with what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. When I can't sleep well at night, it's because I'm stressed sometimes about student decisions. So that goes part and parcel with being a dean of students and in decisions that are out of my control. But when I can't sleep in my life, it's because I'm not congruent with what I'm thinking and feeling. And I think Bruce always led with a sense of integrity in how he showed up and how he engaged in conversations with students. And so I've just always so appreciated that. I mean, he and I connect on a regular basis still. He's someone that I can chew on his ear, get some insight and perspective from. You know, it takes a dean of students sometimes to talk to a dean of students to really get a sense of understanding. And I've got great peers that I reach out to, and he's definitely someone that I know, I trust, and I have a great deal of admiration and respect for, because he spent a long time at this institution, and that's something to be honored and cherished, quite frankly. It's just, yeah, he's a phenomenal man. And his wife, Kathy, is just absolutely stellar too. If nothing else, Bruce absolutely married up.
We'll pass that along to him.
Yeah.
Funniest day on the job as dean of students so far?
Funniest day? Wow. Funniest day on the job. One of the funniest things that I ever had happen to me, I was in I was in Walmart, and my wife and I were getting some food. Now, this is the thing that comes to mind anyway. And I was in the milk section. I was actually getting some milk. And in the milk section, if you go to our Walmart, that's where they also have alcohol. And so I had a student, I was getting some milk, and the student grabs a great big case of probably the cheapest, most horrible drinking beer you could buy, because it's Keystone. Cheap. And he looks over at Keystone. Yes, he got Keystone. I will not call Keystone bad, though. I don't want to be sued by Keystone. Anyway, and the student picks it up and he goes, "Hey there, President Staben, how are you doing?" And he mistook me for President Staben. And I was like, "Doing great. Have a good day." I chose not to correct him. And so he had a great conversation. And so that was actually one of the funniest things that I dealt with. But I get mistaken for President Green actually quite a bit too. And so I grew the beard just to kind of create a distinguishing between the two of us. So since I've grown the beard, I haven't been called President Green yet. So anyway, it's pretty funny.
Good. All right, Sandy, why don't we turn it over to you for a couple of questions, and then we'll come back.
All right. Okay. I have a question here from someone from the class of 1983. How is U of I adapting to the clean energy transition in terms of curriculum and student/career outreach opportunities?
Wow. The clean energy, I couldn't address that. I will say a couple of things. I'll do my best to answer it, but we have a stellar career services office. We have great individuals that work with our employers that we come to campus. We hear a great deal about from our employers how they love Vandals because we give them great internship opportunities. And so I would say we're transitioning really well that way. Yeah, Sandy, could you repeat that question? I want to make sure I'm trying to answer it here.
How is U of I adapting to the clean energy transition in terms of curriculum and student and career outreach opportunities? Okay,
basically it's a question, how are we transitioning to clean energy? I honestly couldn't speak to the clean energy curriculum that much. I can definitely work at trying to find some folks. We have a sustainability center here on campus. It's under student affairs. We work with them on it. We have students that are incredibly passionate about that. And students really want to move towards the future of a sustainable resource. That's incredibly important for us. For this generation. They think about it probably more than any other generation because they're going to be the most impacted by it. I talk with students on a regular basis about our sustainability efforts on campus, and they want to do more. We don't currently do recycling on campus. We've got some limitations there within our community and within our region, to be honest, but that's not stopping the students from having that conversation, and definitely we want to engage in a more sustainable future. I think as an institution of higher learning and education, we should be leaders in that area. And I know that's something that's really important to the president as well as the provost to move us in that direction.
Okay. Here's another one in terms of academia, if you can address, and if you can't address these, we can find answers too, and we can get back to the people that are asking the questions too. But if you can address this one, in terms of student scholarships, is U of I reaching out to the various industry sectors to supplement funding of STEM programs and student internships?
So I would say yes, but I couldn't give any more details on what that looks like. We're always looking to reach out and engage our industry partners. And we've got some great partnerships in that area, to be honest. I know that that's always an area that we want to develop further in, because we want to not just get scholarships from these industry leaders, we want to create those internship opportunities. And I'll tell you a quick story on an internship. There was a young student a few years ago, his name was Jeffrey. He was an RA in the residence halls, and he and I struck up a friendship. He, out of the blue, emailed me one day and said, Dean Eckles, I'd love to grab some coffee and just visit with you. So we developed a relationship and a friendship. And through the course of his entire academic tenure, we maintained, we'd probably get together a couple times a semester and have coffee and just visit, talk about life, talk about general. Well, Jeffrey got an internship while he was a student over the summertime at home in Seattle. By the time he graduated, he had an offer for $75,000 as an undergraduate that he turned down, and he then accepted the offer from his current employer that he was doing an internship with, and he started working at that company full-time once he graduated. That is the power of internships. That is what students can do. And we work really hard to connect students with those wonderful employers for those internship opportunities, because we see that helps not only our employers out, but it definitely helps our students out, giving them a good foothold into their future from a learning experience.
Thank you. I know we weren't going to sit on COVID too long, but was there any data of how many people were admitted, how many students were admitted to the hospital last year, and do we have any data this year? I know.
Oh, wow. I that have gone to the hospital. I don't have that number off the top of my head. I'll be honest, I don't recall. We had several students that went to the hospital. I don't know of any that were on a ventilator last year. I'd have to go back and pull that data. I don't know of any students that have gone to the hospital and been hospitalized. We've had several students go to the hospital to get checked out, but then been released that same day. I don't have any hard data on that though.
Okay.
Sorry. Blaine, I was going to interject here. One thing you were talking about internships. One thing that I hear from alumni all the time is, I hire Vandals because of, they used to be called soft skills, but now the durable skills, hard work, can work in a team, can communicate. What is it about a Vandal education that builds that skill set?
Yeah, I think it's multidisciplinary is what it is in a lot of ways, and not from an academic sense. It goes back to that development conversation that we want to give students experiences that matter. And what our employers are really looking for are students that have good transferable skill sets. Sure, they want to have a strong engineer, but they want to make sure that engineer also can communicate well and can write well as well, not just do the mathematics from the work that they do. They want to hire leaders, and we excel, I believe, in the opportunity that we provide students leadership opportunities to grow and have that confidence to engage in small working group teams to larger teams. One of my favorite things that I love doing with students, especially when it comes to our recruitment experiences, I'll look to grab one of our orientation leaders and have them join me on stage in a panel presentation, speaking and talking to parents and family members about students. And you should see the saucers that they get in their eyes, but that's developing skills in them, so they know they can find their own voice and share their own story and engage and communicate. And those are transferable skill sets that you can't just learn right off the cuff. It takes some time and development. So our goal is to give them those opportunities to flesh out their resume so that makes them much more marketable, which is, I think, again, one of the core strengths of being a residential campus. We have a lot of opportunities for students to develop leadership skills, communication skills, all the soft transferable skills that you kind of referenced there, Kathy, that really makes them really highly employable by employers. Even
when I worked at another institution, I hired Vandals just for that reason, much to my employer's chagrin, but I did.
Absolutely.
What else have you got, Sandy?
Diversity and inclusion is so important to an institution. It is often challenging in a small town. What does your office do to make all students feel welcome on and off campus?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, we have to create an open opportunity to make sure students can communicate and share with us that they're feeling uncomfortable. And I do that on by engaging and talking with students. I meet with them on a regular basis. If a student is sitting and studying in the hallway outside my office or in the ISEP, I'll go up and just introduce myself and saying, hey, do you have a few minutes so I can understand what their lived experience looks like, especially if they're a student of color. We want them to understand that they're welcome here. It's important they be here. If we're looking at just the Moscow campus, we're in north central Idaho. It's primarily white individuals that go to school here. So those students, even if it's a friendly environment, are going to feel a different experience than I would, or many of us on this call would. So creating a space where they can talk and share their experiences and be vulnerable in doing so when they're talking about it is really important. We have to listen. You know, I had the privilege, I worked with Dr. Yolanda Bisbee, a great Vandal. She's our chief diversity officer last year, as well as a few other campus partners. And we worked very closely with the Moscow Police Department last year. And we created a program called Focused, where we brought law enforcement and students of color together to talk about race relations between people of color and the Moscow PD. President Green was part of that. So was Provost Lawrence. The chief of police participated. It was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. The heartfelt conversations we had talking about why are there race relation? Why is there mistrust issues at times? What does it look like in the home community for our students of color that participated in those experiences? Because many of them don't come from here. They come from larger communities where there are stronger, more difficult race relations. Then we talked about what their experience was like here in Moscow, working with our Moscow Police Department, and what their experience was like here on campus. And having those conversations was just absolutely breathtaking and beautiful. I learned so much from our students. I was in awe of how they shared their life experiences and whatnot. So we definitely want to engage and have conversations. We also want to support the programs that we have going on campus that welcome our students here. Our Office of Multicultural Affairs, led by Jesse Martinez, does a phenomenal job. We just hired, I don't think we've hired someone, but we just opened a new office to support students of African-American descent, or the Black Student Union experience, so that we have students that can connect with other professionals so that they understand too. Part of it is creating an environment where they're seeing folks around them. Part of it is definitely creating avenues when they're struggling and having those difficulties, they can reach out and talk to us about it as well, so we can stand with them while it's getting addressed.
Blaine, talk a little bit about what surprised you most in those conversations between the students of color and the police. Were there any big surprises for you?
Not a surprise so much as something that just, it was an aha moment for me. And this was just a beautiful way. I'm gonna not say it well. You know, you've got your lived experiences. Student would share their life experiences and what that looked like. But there's one student who shared with us. He goes, you know, growing up, most people that are not people of color, most white individuals, you learn about the law through what you see on TV, LA law, Hill Street Blues, law enforcement. That's how you kind of learn and define what laws. You learn about your Miranda rights by doing that. He goes, for my community, and this was a Native American student, he goes, I learned about it through the lived experiences of what my family went through and what I went through. He goes, we become law experts in a lot of ways based on our lived experience. And I'd never stopped to think about that before in any way, shape, or form. And that's true for many individuals of color from that aspect of it. He didn't talk about it from the standpoint of his experience here, but just so much people learn the law in certain communities at times based on their interactions that they have on a regular basis with law enforcement. And that was just kind of an eye-opening experience. There was another one that was just incredibly powerful for me, where this young man shared, he was about 11 or 12 years old. And he and his family were driving. This was in southern Idaho. His parents didn't speak English. He and his sister were sitting in the back seat, and they got pulled over, I think, for a minor traffic violation. And he had to interpret for his parents and the law enforcement officer. And for an 11-year-old to have to engage in that conversation and feel the responsibility of making sure, I've got to do this right. I've got to get this right. I got to make sure my parents understand what's being asked. That's a lot of pressure that our students, and I've never had to worry about that in my life. And so they're just really eye-opening experiences sometimes. Our students are just some of the most amazing individuals that we have. It's breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. And we have one program on campus that we do every year hosted by our Office of Multicultural Affairs. And I'm going to mangle the title of it, but it's Voices de Campo, where we have students that come from our migrant farm working families share their experiences. That's probably one of the most powerful presentations and programs I've ever attended, where they talk about how they go out and help in their families in the morning before going to school, and then their parents are working all day. Then they'll go out after school's done to help out while their parents are there too. I mean, it's some breathtaking experiences that really open your eyes to see how hard students work to get here, because education can change the whole trajectory of a family in generations to come. And that's why it's important for those families to support their students coming here. And so I want to do everything I can to keep them here, help them be successful, because of the sacrifices their families are making. So we've got some pretty amazing experiences that our students live through, and they don't talk about it, but they will if you ask them and listen.
When you think of the impact on a student who does graduate and then go back to their community, pretty amazing. Sandy, you have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. How do you deal with the ever-changing circumstances on campus? And I know you talked a little bit about the instant gratification generation that is in front of us right now, but it's, I worked in student counseling a gazillion years ago, and I know things change on a day-to-day basis. And now I work in event planning, and then things change as well. And enter COVID, that just creates another challenge, but it's always something. It's not just always COVID. There's always something. How do you deal with that? How do you work through that as a dean of students?
Well, you don't ever believe anything is set until it's actually happened. And so, things are subject to change at any given moment. And that's because of human nature. That's because life happens and whatnot. And so as a dean of students, you learn pretty quickly that things change on the last minute. You've got to learn how to pivot with it. Change stimulates growth, quite frankly. And that's a life lesson that I bring to our students. Don't ever set anything in stone, because things may be subject to change. I learned a great deal from my parents, and my mother in particular, who had MS. I shared that with you and whatnot. And through my engagement with my mom, had one of the most positive attitudes I've ever experienced. And she, used a wheelchair. She had a live-in care attendant up until the day she died from cancer. And she was a very positive individual. And so I've learned how to put, for me personally, things in perspective. People would often feel sorry for her because she had MS and she couldn't walk anymore, or she needed a care attendant and whatnot. And she's like, you know what? There's someone that's worse off than I am. I have a blessing of having someone that can care for me, and I can stay living in my home as a result. So I'm not going to cry in my cup as a result. That is an incredibly powerful lesson that I've taken to heart, that I get stressed out at times, but then I have a little tag on my monitor in my office that says perspective. And I just have to put the challenges and the stressors that I have and the change that happens into the right perspective. And sometimes we forget to put things in the right perspective. I'm not dealing with a student that's in the hospital, or a son or a daughter in the hospital. So I've got a privilege there. I'm not dealing with trying to make sure that I'm the first generation in my family going off to school. So I've got privilege there. So I can handle a lot of the change, and I don't mind change at all. It stimulates growth, and that's a learning lesson for everybody.
Absolutely.
Blaine, talk a little bit about, I think it's a national phenomenon, but almost the sense that a college education isn't worth it, that somehow it's not worth the money, it's not worth the time, it's politically not what it should be. Talk a little bit about what that means for our students and for the academy in general.
Sure. So, clearly we all know examples of individuals that never went on to higher education and were incredibly successful. We all know those individuals, and some of them are staunch supporters of the university at that. Education is how we grow and learn, whether it's life education you get outside or inside. We know studies show that over the course of a lifetime, students are likely to earn probably on average about $1 million more than someone who doesn't have a higher education. They just don't see the tangibility for that. I get excited when I think about a university, because our job is to generate new knowledge. What is the new information that we're going to discover through the education that we're learning? And by teaching individuals, by creating learning opportunities both in and outside the classroom, we're potentially going to unlock that concept, that mind, that great idea that is going to change and save lives. We have an alum from a couple of years ago, a guy by the name of Brandon Bledsoe, great guy. And I can't remember the name of his company, but he and a few other Vandals, they have a company based out of Coeur d'Alene, and I'm totally blanking on it right now. I feel horrible for it because Brandon's just a stellar alum. Where they designed this glove that as you get closer to an electrical line, the glove lights up. It shows some lights. And they're marketing that to linemen and women that are climbing power poles. They can literally save lives, and they are saving lives through their creation. And they got that idea here. And then they work with some venture capitals, and they're growing their company, and they're going to go out and change the entire industry through their efforts. And they're succeeding at that too. And so I'm really excited about what education can do, because it can change the entire future of an individual, of a family, of a community, of a nation, of a world. Too often people think in very myopic, simplistic terms. In education, you don't know where it's going to take you. But I would just say, look at where education's gotten us today. We've been doing this thing for a couple thousand years now, going all the way back to Socrates. And we've been evolving education since then. And we're in space, we're traveling around the world, all through what education has provided us.
Excellent, excellent. We have one more question, Sandy.
Yeah, I have one question for you. What do you think is the most exciting thing happening on campus today or right now?
Ooh, what isn't exciting that's happening?
A lot of things.
The exciting thing really is this year we have like 2 classes of Vandals that have returned. Last year, the incoming class, they really didn't have the traditional first year experience because we didn't have a lot of the opening experiences. We didn't have football in the fall. We didn't have a lot of our sporting events or a lot of our social engagement experiences. So this year we've kind of doubled down, and we are seeing, what's exciting is just seeing students showing up. They are devouring the programming that we're putting out there. They're showing up in droves to a lot of different things that we have happening on campus. And so it's really exciting to see the excitement back from students, and they're eager to create these engagement opportunities and to connect with others and do that. We had one young woman, her name's Megan. President Green actually wrote about this in a recent Friday letter. Her name was Megan. Just phenomenal. I had a great opportunity. I was sitting outside the ISEP. She just got done with a vaccination clinic. And the night before that, she had gone to a Vandal gaming event where I was actually playing video games with students, having a lot of fun, losing horribly at Mario Kart, by the way, but having a lot of fun at doing that. And I asked her the next day after I saw her after the vaccination clinic, I said, hey, how are you doing? How's the semester going? Did you enjoy last night? She goes, I absolutely did. And she goes, you know what? I had so much fun. I'm connecting with the students I met last night, for the first time. They were going to go to the Screen on the Green that night. And then I saw her a week later and I said, how are things going still? She goes, we kept playing games throughout the whole weekend. And she has this new cohort of friends that she's connected with. And that's what really gets me excited, is when students are making that connectivity, because they're finding their place. They're finding their tribe. They're finding the reason why they want to stay here outside of their educational experience. And we know students are going to be more passionate about learning. They're going to be more focused on their education when they have that outside connection. And it's just really, it's thrilling to see, quite frankly. I get really excited when I think about it in what our students are doing.
That's one thing every alum I've ever talked to will tell you, that the friends they made when they were in college are their friends today. They're the ones who were at their wedding. They're the ones who they had their kids. Lifelong friendships is definitely a hallmark of a Vandal education.
Absolutely. And, if nothing else, I talk to our students on a regular basis about, you're standing on the shoulders of Vandals who have come before you. And I want you to have such a rich, wonderful experience like they did. Don't waste these opportunities, because you've got generations of Vandals that want you to do nothing but succeed. And we're really excited about that opportunity. And oh, by the way, reach out and engage with our Vandal alumni. They're incredible mentors. They're incredible individuals that you can develop relationships with, and they want to have those relationships with you. And so that's just a wonderful opportunity for our students to grow and learn from others who have come before them and get what it means to be a Vandal.
I'm going to take this moment for a shameless plug for the Vandal Mentor Network. You can find the link on our website, and I hope you'll all sign up and be mentors for our current students and for young alumni. one last question for me. Sandy, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. One last question, and then just whatever you want to share with the group, Blaine. What's the piece of advice that you give every student that you encounter?
Right now, it's go get vaccinated if you can get vaccinated. That's my number one piece of advice, quite frankly. I definitely want them to get vaccinated if they can, and we'll do that. But I would say get involved, get engaged, get connected, reach out. This is the opportunity more than any other time in your life where you can explore, try new things, and there's going to be a safety net here to catch you if you make a mistake and you mess up. Because you all know, many of you know, once you graduate college and you get a job and you start a family, it is much harder to do the different things that you wished you'd done. I tell students on a regular basis, my one regret that I have from being an undergraduate is I did not travel internationally when I was an undergraduate. When you're young, you don't mind sleeping on people's floors. you can live just on ramen noodles and still have a great experience. So get out there and do that. So get involved. Go backpacking for the first time. Go whitewater rafting. Try out for a play. Go sing in a music recital. Do things that push your boundaries, because that's exactly what you should be doing right now, and grow and learn in different ways. Then you're only going to hold yourself back, and we're only going to help you open the doors. So get engaged and get involved.
It's awesome. That's awesome. You and I have talked often that happy involved students turn into happy involved alumni, and that's a virtuous circle if I ever heard of one.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the hallmarks of our institution that I absolutely love is our alumni. I mean, we have a stellar alumni base, and I'll tell you, this is a quick, funny little anecdote, but when I was working at my former institution, our director of admissions had talked to the director of admissions at Boise State had talked to the director of admissions up there, and he goes, and this is a story he told me. He goes, "I will trade you our football team if you just give me your alumni." If we could swap the two, it would be fantastic. And I mean, because it just speaks to the hallmark that our alumni, how involved they are, how much they care, how much they give, how much they have sacrificed for our institution. And I love engaging and working with our alumni. They're just stellar, great mentors, great leaders for our students, and just, for me personally, great partners. I texted with Mitch Sonnen not too long ago about a very serious issue. I love working with him on those kinds of things. Not that I like having those kinds of issues, but it's that trust and relationship that we can develop. I've worked with David Poe and other alumni, Rick Sparks. I mean, there's just some amazing alumni that we do. Barbara Bull, I just love that woman. She's just amazing in so many wonderful ways. So we've got some stellar alumni that just are just outstanding Vandals and just lead with a V on their heart for the Vandals.
Great words. Thank you, my friend. I so appreciate you spending time with us this afternoon, and for all you do for the university. Truly, I mean, awesome stuff. Our time together is coming to an end, so please join us again on November 9th. Is that right, Sandy? We'll be visiting with former Idaho student athlete David Fabora, who is now professionally working with injured veterans and others with major industries as part of our Veterans Day programming. So I hope you'll join us again then. Until then, thank you all for joining us. And as always, go Vandals.
Go Vandals.